everybody. It is David Palmer, Leo King, and we are here for February 2019. And this is my horoscope, which we're going to be going deep into February. And I'm sure a lot of people have been asking, you know, what in the heck is this guy talking about saying goodbye? Well, there's a lot of things that are happening here in February, but I would say that the biggest thing to really talk about is really Chiron, and Chiron moving out of Pisces, which it has been here for a long time. Think about this whole entire decade, pretty much, that you've been living since 2010 and 11, when Chiron had finally switched into Pisces. Chiron is on a weird orbit, and I really want to show people this orbit and understand Chiron a little bit better before we go into the astrology, because Chiron has been in Pisces, which is the last sign of the zodiac. Chiron has a very weird history, and Chiron has a lot of weird stuff. You know, Chiron was discovered in 1977, so you have to remember that Chiron takes 50 years to come around the sun. And when you think about the last time Chiron was in Pisces and when it ended in the late 60s, we didn't even know Chiron was there. So this is the first time in life our souls, our awareness has even been aware of this energy. And what I really want to show you all here is, let's see, where did it go here? Okay. Oh yeah, all right, here we are. Okay, let's see if we can actually, get to this. So Chiron is very weird because the orbit of Chiron goes in between Saturn and Uranus. Now, why is that such a big deal in that orbit? Well, the biggest deal is because Saturn is where the edge of our physical reality is in astrology, because Saturn rules the reality itself. It rules the physical reality, the bones. That's why Saturn rules transcendental. This is called the transcendental line. And why is that? Because your teeth, right? Physical. Saturn rules the bones. It rules your teeth. And when you go past Saturn, you can't see anything physical anymore with your own eyes anymore. And you get into this Uranus area, which brings out the weirdness, right? These subconscious elements. And Chiron sits in between the physical and the subconscious. And so that's why it's such a weird place and a weird position, because we really are in a weird space with Chiron, because it does deal with this in-between conscious state of ourselves. And yes, we are live, by the way. I'm reading the chat, too. You guys can barely hear. Hold on one second. Snowball. Let's see if I can bump up the sound for you all here. Hold on one second. Bump up the sound. Device properties here. Listen, levels. This should help it now a little bit more. Let me know if that helps out. You can hear fine? I'm showing really positive things on the microphone here. Let's see if, it's showing positive, so let me just know if that's better. Is that better? We good? Yeah, we should be good now. All right. So the big thing here is Chiron, and Chiron's weird element here. And because it is in between these two spaces. And this is a very weird time in February, because Chiron is done with its time in Pisces, and Pisces is the end of the zodiac, and Pisces definitely is about true surrender, and Chiron is a very weird vibe. Now let's take some look at some pictures of Chiron, right? So Chiron is weird because it is in all the planetary orbits, but it is not a planet. It's a minor planet. It's got Saturn-like qualities too, with the rings around it. But many people that don't really know about Chiron is Chiron, when it goes to, and I'll show you in the orbit here, when Chiron comes towards this area where it reaches more of the alignment with Saturn's lines, and it gets closer to the sun, it actually gets hotter and actually forms steam and actually can create a trail. And then when Chiron comes all the way around to this area where it gets by Uranus, it gets really cold and gets icy. And then when that ice melts on the other side of this orbit right here, it starts to steam. Now, because Chiron and Uranus, even though they are not exactly close, they are close. So that means Chiron is in the more icy area in the orbital energy right now. Which we could have some fun, and we could, what we could do is show you all in heliocentric astrology here. Let's run a new chart for today. And today is the 31st of January of 2019, and let's do this for now, which is about 7 p.m. and I'm in Huntington Beach here at the office. And what we're going to do here is we are going to run, and this is fun for you guys to do. So right now we're running tropical zodiac, but we're going to want to run heliocentric, okay? And we're going to want to have Chiron on, and we want aspects to Chiron. And we'll have fun with all the other asteroids. And let's click here. So what a heliocentric chart is this. This is the chart of the sun at the center, okay? Now Chiron has technically, in heliocentric, already come into Aries, all right? Now, with Chiron close to Uranus, if you can see, that means in the orb, think about these orbs and how they work. So when you look at these orbs, right, because Chiron and Saturn are close, I mean, Chiron and Saturn are kind of close, right, and Uranus, because see how Uranus comes here, and it's this Chiron-Uranus element that when they're very close to each other, they definitely get very cold. And I'm just going to be very honest with everybody, okay? Here, I'm not trying to, like, this isn't scary in my opinion, but remember that Uranus is on a 84-year cycle, okay? So Uranus is slow. Chiron's on a 50-year cycle, so it's pretty slow. But Chiron keeps gaining more speed as it gets closer and closer and closer to Uranus. If you look in your own chart, okay? So we'll have some fun and we'll just run, like, we'll just have fun and we'll run, I don't know, who's born, like, we could do, like, we'll do Donald Trump, right? So Chiron and then Libra, and where's Uranus for him? All the way over here, right? So he has a Chiron-Uranus trine. But if you start to go to people born after that, so let's actually keep it on Trump and we'll move the years ahead. Okay, so we'll move it into like the 50s. Now you get Chiron and Uranus in opposition, okay? And the Chiron-Uranus opposition goes on for years, decades, okay? Now we go into the 60s. Uranus, Pluto, Chiron opposition. And here we are in 66. Here we are in 67 with Chiron at 29 degrees Pisces, exactly where it is now today. But it was opposing Pluto and Uranus. And it's always been in these major oppositions for a long time. Go into the 70s, right? Chiron-Uranus opposition. Go into the 80s. Chiron-Uranus opposition. We pretty much, a lot of us born, or a lot of us that are watching this, especially if you're born in the 50s and higher, if you're born in the 40s and lower, you don't really have the Chiron-Uranus opposition. But a lot of us that are watching here have the Chiron-Uranus opposition, okay? But when you go up and you start to get to the 90s, now you got Chiron and Uranus in different places. You got Uranus here. Oh, and wait. Chiron has now come off the opposition. So it was in the 90s when we started to get this. This is where Chiron was at its hottest. Okay? Where it was at hot when we were all born during that time. And why do you think in the world Chiron's found in the 70s? And let's look at 1977. Okay? Chiron's found in 77 when it's in Taurus, in exact opposition to Uranus. And why is that the case? Because from a perspective of like if you were an astronomer, that means Chiron was in opposition to Uranus's orbit, which means that it was easier to see from Earth. From Earth's perspective, it was much easier to see because of where it is in the sun. It was really close to the lines of Saturn, which we can see with our eyes. We could actually see it. It was actually seen. We were looking up at Saturn, and what the hell is that thing that just went by? Right? Like, whoa! And that's a 50-year cycle. But that also means that Uranus was in exact opposition in the orbit. And so that means that, you know, we were in a really weird opposition moment, but that was Chiron away from the colder realms and much more, and even though Saturn and Uranus are both cold energies, it was definitely more in a hotter zone. Now, we are approaching, over these next couple decades here, Chiron and Uranus conjunction point, which will be at its more colder zone, but also a major healing zone for humanity and the planet where it was in opposition. So why do you think that we've seen so much? Well, we've seen a lot of healing with humanity, but also we've also seen at the same time this really weird feeling through the 60s, 70s, and 80s of humanity and in understanding its true, humble, and weird roots of what humanity is. We've seen humanity at its weirdest positions in the last, you know, I would say since the transit of Chiron leaving Pisces and entering into Aries. And we are now in a different space that Chiron is coming at the end of the zodiac, because now, and we got to look at kind of, this is a helio chart, remember? And so what's very interesting about this helio chart is it will always teach you, remember, the planets never go retrograde from the sun's position. So look at Mars. It's already at 29 degrees of Taurus coming into Gemini, right? Look at this. This is the Earth and this is the Moon. They're always right next to each other, right? It's in Leo because from Earth's point of view, right, when we look up at the sun, this is the sun, we see the backdrop in the tropical zodiac of Aquarius. And that's why right now the sun and Mercury are conjunct, because see, Mercury is behind the sun. And so there's this element of, we have a sun-Mercury conjunction point, okay? But the sun's burning Mercury out, right? And so this is how you understand the astronomy element of things, but it's more important to kind of understand the galactic understanding, or I guess you could call it more of a universal understanding of what's going on, and understanding actually where the planets really are from Earth's point of view towards the sun's point of view, if that makes sense. Now, it's such a big deal with Chiron because the end of Pisces is definitely a weird spot. So let's come to today. And here's Chiron, 2909. Now, let's do a deep reflection on Chiron when it was back in 67 and 68, when it did the same thing it's been doing for the last 2 years, okay? So here we are. Okay, so we come into the 60s. The whole 60s revolution was Pluto-Uranus conjunction, which was insanely revolutionary. The last one was in the 1800s when it was in Aries, which was definitely a revolution of the industrial complex and stuff. This one was much more of a change in the reality. We were trying to identify crazy new things. But Pluto hadn't been found yet in the 1800s. So it was the 60s that was the first Pluto-Uranus conjunction that blew our minds and changed the world, and LSD and love and revolution and, you know, the Cold War and the battle between love and humanity, how intense humanity can be connected and how destructive humanity can be with Vietnam War and the nuclear bombs and all those things. And with Chiron in opposition, I think there was this whole element of learning to realize that there was a humbling that there's no way that we could have done the things that we really wanted to try and change, because there was still a lot of deep soul work that had to be done. And plus Saturn and Chiron were very close. And so you look into 65, right? And 66, you get Saturn and Chiron conjunct opposed Pluto Uranus. Let's look at that here. So that's when Chiron and Saturn had met, right here. You can see Chiron's red line. You can see Saturn's red line. They conjunct at this point, and they're in opposition to Uranus. And see Pluto back here. And Pluto and Uranus were conjunct. So it was a perfect, huge opposition. That was why the 60s was such a transformational, spiritual, revolutionary experience where all these things were known, except Chiron was not known yet and not found until the 70s. So we've never actually been through this moment here, because if we look at 66, now we move forward to 67, now we move forward to 68. Oh, froze on me. Hold on, I just gotta reload that real quick. But when you think about the way that this cycle works, okay, I always freeze the program. I am the king of freezing programs. So this is the first moment in all of human history that we are going to feel Chiron at the last degree of the zodiac, with all these understandings finally done, and with, in heliocentric, Chiron and Uranus now coming into a close. So this is a different 50-year cycle. The last 50 years from the end of the 60s was Chiron and Uranus in opposition, which we can easily just show right now. We could just go to 1966 and throw this in, right? And here you have Chiron and Saturn oppose Uranus. Look at that. Exact. Now remember, this is a helio chart. So this is exactly what was going on the planet from the sun's point of view and astronomy point of view, okay? So when this cycle ended in the late 60s, it landed a 50-year cycle that we are now closing, but this was a major opposition where the world and the structures of the world were at battle. And even though there's remnants of that now, we are actually closing that door. And the reason why I'm saying that this month is about saying goodbye in all elements is because, you gonna load the program? Thank you. So let's go to 69. 69, Uranus comes into Aries, but that's January of 69, right? You go to 70 and Chiron's fully in. But what's interesting is if you do the months of 69, Chiron comes in, and it's going to do exactly where we were at this year. Chiron comes to 6 degrees this year of Aries, okay? And Chiron went retrograde, and it does not go back. It does the same 2-degree thing in the 70s. So it's really the end of 68 that we went through the last time of this exact transit, okay? Chiron 28 retrograde goes direct, okay? Goes direct like we just had it go direct at the, basically at the end of 2018. In December, exactly same alignment. It's always going to be exact, okay? 50 years, exact placements too, okay? Is everybody with me, or is this too far? Am I going too far out with people? Because I have to do this, because this is the main event of February 2018, because whether you guys all want to look at astrology from like, okay, when's the full moon going to be, and when's Mars coming into Taurus, which we're going to show all that stuff. This event is so powerful, it has never happened in our lives before, okay? So if I'm losing people, I'm sorry, but this is some deep astrology. So now we come into December, Chiron, right? It's going to be the exact same. It's going to blow your mind, right? With this whole like Chiron at 29, January. It's a little behind by a little bit, just by like a month, just because you have to think of our calendar system is off always with leap years every 4 years. And then there's a giant leap year every, I think it's like every 100 or whatever years. But long story short, the time of our calendar is not the same as the time of the stars exactly. So it's in January of 69 that Chiron, like, look at where we're at today. Exactly 50 years ago, Chiron entered into Aries. Yesterday. Okay? Exactly 50 years ago. That's why these last couple of days have kind of felt really weird, too, to be honest with you all. All right? Now, let's look at January 30th of 1968. So you can go January 1969, sorry. Okay? January 1969. Okay? Nixon is inaugurated president. How ironic in political elements. You gotta remember that very Chiron story, right? Nixon goes to try to become the president under JFK during the whole Chiron and Pisces transit. Well, right before it comes in, loses, comes in, and is going through the election in 1968 and wins. And it's a total Chiron story of like, gosh, this guy loses an election, comes back and wins an election. The guy lost to JFK and won an election later. And here's Johnson right here, who's a very Piscean Chiron story after JFK's horrible assassination and death. Now, president loses and is letting go of the office and giving it to Nixon, who he fought up against back in the past, and they're not happy. It's funny that in today's media, right, they didn't zoom in on the faces of Johnson or the First Lady. They didn't get into the gossip and all that stuff. They just would show this, and they would just, it's pretty day and da-da-da-da-da. Now, you got to remember, Chiron was not seen yet. It was not understood yet fully, right? It was not known. How ironic that this president, Nixon, goes through the same crazy crap that the current president, Donald Trump, is about to go through with the Watergate scandal, with the Democratic Party of, breaching the democratic issues. And, I'm not political. I'm not on either side here. I just think it's a very interesting element here. Same shit's going on, right? A scandal with breaching, with WikiLeaks, the democratic information. That's what that's all about. All this kind of stuff. And a guy like Nixon who felt like he lost. And there's a part of Trump who tried to run for president a bunch but didn't. But he never actually ran, but he kind of tried to run, right? And then it just didn't feel right, but came when he felt like it was right, and then came in. And all the people that were with Nixon at the time, believe it or not, like Roger Stone. So you look up Roger Stone, who right now is, indicted, right? So you do Roger Stone, Richard Nixon, okay? I'm just trying to show you guys how crazy this stuff is, right? Like, Roger Stone was part of the Nixon campaign and Watergate, okay? You can go watch all this stuff. Like, it's pretty insane. Stone's political career began in the earnest of the 1962 Nixon campaign. Now, remember, Nixon was president and then ran again. And it was during that second run that all that crap happened. But still, it's interesting to see the connections of all this stuff cycling over and bubbling over from that time. Okay. There was an Enterprise blast that kills a bunch of people. It was about, you got to remember that the end of Pisces is very weird. Okay, so let's look at 69. And you always want to find connections, The Congress, on its opening day as the U.S. Senate swore in 15 new members and 20 re-elected ones. We just had a bunch of new people come into Congress. I mean, it is kind of weird. Marilyn Manson's born. That's a very interesting guy, right? Marilyn Manson, born Chiron at 29 degrees of Pisces, like total weirdo, but like totally expressing his soul and nobody understands him. Does that make sense? Yeah, Roger Stone does have a Nixon's tattoo on the back. He's wearing Chiron at Pisces, 29 degree in the back. And his whole story, actually, you can watch the documentary on Roger Stone that's on Netflix right now, and it's pretty crazy, his story of why he got the tattoo, of how no matter how many times you can lose or fall, you can win, but it's only when you quit is when you lose, is his mentality, which is very kind of Chiron Pisces coming into Aries, right? And for all of us, we feel like we've lost something and we're losing something, but there is something on the other side here where we can win. We're all not Richard Nixon. We're all not going to go through Watergate. I'm just saying that we all are leaving a lot. And it's interesting to see people born during that moment of the last time that Chiron was in Pisces, because there was a weird thing in January. Marilyn Manson's born. Marilyn Manson's got a very weird Chiron-y vibe. He's weirdo, you know, but he's expressing his soul in such a weird way, people don't understand him. And there's a lot of things that we don't understand of why things are right now. Just how we can experience the understanding of, like, through a person with Chiron at 29 degrees of Pisces. Like, there is a part of them that we don't understand. We don't understand Marilyn Manson. Like, is he that or whatever, right? You know? Then, of course, there was another Super Bowl during that time, which we're about to have this weekend. New York Jets quarterback Joe Namath, which we all know is huge, and if you're not into sports, whatever, accepts the award for the Miami Touchdown Club 3 days before Super Bowl III, and said in his after-dinner remarks to the crowd, at the time of the boast, the 9-year-old American Football League had not come close to winning either of the first 2 Super Bowls against the 49-year-old NFL, losing scores 35-10 and 33-14. So it's like, is there an element here of Tom Brady? He's been back in the Super Bowl a bunch, right? Like, is he going to lose again or not? Or we don't know, right? Kind of an interesting element here that's kind of building on this Super Bowl. Same Super Bowl at that time. Weird kind of energy. You got to kind of like look into a lot of this weird stuff. Led Zeppelin's album is released. Why is that such a big deal? Led Zeppelin, the first Led Zeppelin album, the original one, changed rock and roll forever. Now, I know the Beatles came out with Chiron and Pisces, but Led Zeppelin did something that the Beatles didn't do. They were not poppy. They were rock and roll that was edgy and different and blew people's minds, and a lot of people didn't understand it, and then a lot of people freaked out and thought it was devil music at the time, and they didn't get it, right? You know? So anyways, if you look at the Super Bowl, Joe Namath upsets the Colts 67 to win, right? Name it with the way, right? The rewards and great memories for me come not only from being part of a team in a league that were overwhelmingly underdogs and winning it all, but equally because we lifted people's spirits during a very difficult time. So whoever wins the Super Bowl this weekend, it definitely is like, who does feel more that they're an underdog to win? Is it Brady, who lost, you know, last year and coming back in again? Or is it the Rams, who haven't been there? And ironically enough, like 2002, I think, was the last time the Patriots played the Rams in the Super Bowl, and it was after 9/11, and the Patriots won. And that's where the you know, after the nodal cycle of 2011 that we're in right now, the Patriots became a big team. Nobody really cared about the Patriots up until they won the Super Bowl after the whole 9/11 thing, right? There's a lot of weird connections that are all happening all at the same time right now. There was a plane that crashed, an explosion on the aircraft, you know, The Soviets, everybody was doing a bunch of space stuff at this time. Interesting, SpaceX too has been doing a lot of interesting stuff that we don't understand yet. And you got to remember that this is after we went to the moon. So Chiron also in Pisces was going to the moon, right? And we've been going to Mars a bunch with Chiron and Pisces this whole decade. We've done all these crazy Mars missions, right? Because if we look at we're trying to get to January 30th, basically, right? A partial nuclear meltdown happened, okay, in Switzerland. Like, you got to remember, like, in the end of Pisces, weird shit happens that we don't understand, you know, and it could be very hard, and you have to look at your own life and go, what's weird that we're letting go of? Look at this. On the third day of 9 consecutive days of heavy rainfall in Southern California, mudslides killed people in the same day. 95 people. It's weird that here in California, we've had more rain than we've had in decades. Right now, at the exact end of Chiron and Pisces, the same thing is happening right now. Like, we had 2 weeks ago, 5 days of rain. Never happens here. And then right now, we're having rain. And we just had the fires, and then, you know, now the mudslides are happening all over again. But it's always interesting, like, right when it's done. So Elvis Presley steps into the American studios, Memphis, Tennessee, recording Long Block Limousine, thus beginning the recording of what would become his landmark comeback sessions for the albums of Elvis from Memphis. So anyway, Elvis starts to come out more, even though he already was out. But remember, Chiron and Pisces was Elvis. People, like, I don't know, music was changing. People were getting used to things that they didn't understand. And they thought were weird, but were great. You know? Keeps locking up. It might be your internet, because we're showing nothing but solid stream here. But the last day, January 30th, 69. It's actually the 29th and 30th. The Beatles gave their last ever public performance in what is now called the rooftop concert, setting up their instruments on the roof of the London building that served as the corporate headquarters of their recording company, lasting for 42 minutes. Basically, the last Beatles full public performance. Okay? On the day Chiron leaves Pisces. There's an end to major stories that happen during this transit. The largest oil spill in U.S. history, the day and a half before, off the Santa Barbara coast, happened. Look at January 28th of 69. Venus, Chiron, right? They're still in opposition. Uranus, South Node. That's a little bit more Uranian South Node. The Sun and Mercury, 9 degrees. We just had that Kazemi point, right? But I think that there's just what I'm trying to show you all is the end of Pisces in 69, right? Or the beginning of 69, but the end of the whole transit. I mean, literally, like on the last day of the full day, there's the biggest, the U.S., the largest oil spill. In 89, the Exxon Valdez spill would be bigger. But what I'm trying to show everybody, and we're going to get to the astrology next, is you have to look at your life right now, and you need to look this guy in the face. Because you have to let go of a story that is ending in your life. It might be where Chiron is in your own chart. It is on a global scale. We're going to watch things coming to an end in weird situations we don't understand. I've shown everything from the political element to what happened with Nixon and the weirdness of that and how that was just a weird situation. And there's a lot of similar stories there. The largest oil spill, but we don't know what's coming up here in this next 18 days. And I'll be honest with everybody that at the end of Chiron, when it was in Pisces, was with the sun in Aquarius. the weird shit goes on. Now, where was Uranus? Uranus was on the south node and it was in Libra, which had Jupiter there. So it was a pretty extreme, like, weird time on a big scale, but it was in Libra. We have Uranus in the opposite sign now of Aries, which is much more Martian. That is much more Venus, okay? So it was a little bit softer. This one's a little bit harder, okay? This one's a lot more intense that's coming. Because if we look at the astrology of today, this is the exact moment right now, and we look at Chiron here at 29, we've got Mars getting ready to conjunct Uranus as Chiron is leaving. Okay? We have the sun in Aquarius. So the reason why Aquarius you want to look at is because the sun is lighting up Aquarius, which we need to look at what Uranus is doing, because Uranus is the planet that rules over Aquarius. And Mars is in the sign of Aries in its home sign, and Uranus is finishing its 84-year cycle through Aries and moving into Taurus and going to be done. So we're at this in-between spot. February is in-between and crazy because it was born to be in-between and crazy, as it is in between the Uranus-Saturn orbit, as it is now heading into a space we've never even been through or experienced before at the end, where it's coming close to the Uranus side, not the Saturn side, and it's coming towards the colder end, where it's Uranus, cold as ice, and out there, and we are spiritually in the weirdest, unconfusing place ever, at least when it was on the Saturn side the last time, when Chiron was leaving at 29 Pisces. At least it had some sort of, you know, even though it was opposing Saturn and it was opposing Uranus, and at least an opposition point, there is a little bit of like an understanding. Right now, Chiron's not opposing anything. Chiron's coming closer to Uranus, which is making us go into a whole nother dimensional reality and world that we don't fully understand. And it is bringing people to where they're not sure about what's going on. And to be honest with you, it's making squares with Saturn because of where it's coming. So if we think about how Chiron comes here in the orbit, here's Uranus that's ahead of it, right? So as Chiron's coming, Saturn is, right, there's a square happening, right? From Earth's point of view. So, because if we look, right? So here's Saturn, 14. Here's Chiron coming into Aries, right? We just finished the Saturn square Chiron element. That was horrible at the end of 2017. That was not really fun. Because we then came into Saturn Capricorn and this Pluto, Saturn, Pluto thing. This February, the way we start, and let's just go into it now. I really had to do this to everybody because I just had to show people that this is very, 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 very rare. Okay? So here's the first day of February, all right? And let's show you all in the planetary aspects. Now, this is, of course, just through Cafe Astrology, and I'm going to show you what are we expecting this month. We've got Venus coming into Capricorn to start February. Venus in Capricorn, well, that means it's